You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your questions. Anything related to therapy, relationships, or frankly, anything that you have a question about, we want to discuss. Today, I'm here with Amanda Heaton, a therapist at Therapy Utah. Amanda, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am born and raised in Utah, so love it here, love the mountains, and I love being a therapist. So I am a marriage and family therapist at Therapy Utah. Love working with couples, relationships, and trauma. So
Nice. I love it. And Amanda is a guru when it comes to ART, and it is called Accelerated Resolution Therapy, and she's kind of our resident expert. So Amanda's awesome. She has a wealth of knowledge and a friend. So happy to have you here. So today we're going to be talking about relationships and why we hurt each other in relationships, even when we don't mean to, right? And what we're hoping to understand is why this happens and how we can break the cycle and build healthier connections. So we'll just launch right into the question and then we'll get started. The question is, my partner and I love each other, but we keep falling into the same cycle of hurt, misunderstandings, sarcastic comments, or shutting down. We don't want to hurt each other, but it just keeps happening. Why do we do this and how do we stop? First of all, I just want to say I just appreciate the vulnerability and the courage of this question. This is a hard one, and I appreciate the listener just saying, why do we keep doing this? Obviously, there's some frustration around this. So Amanda, here's the first question I would ask. Why do we hurt people that we love the most?
such a good question, right? Why do we do that? I think, Lindsay, it really comes down to, I don't think, for the most part, we intentionally try to hurt the people that we love. But it happens, and you can hear that in this listener's voice, that she is concerned about why do I hurt the people that I love?
Yeah, I loved her honesty. Like, why do I do it? I mean, that requires some introspection too. Why do I do it, right? So, what are some communication habits maybe that happen and that create hurt in a relationship? What would you say are some of the things that maybe we need to be aware of that we might be doing and may not even know that we're doing?
Yeah, no, I think that's so important to look at. And I'm wondering if even before we go there, that we go to the why. Because I love that part of this question where she's asking, why do we do this and how do we stop? Because I don't think we can really understand how to stop unless we understand why we're doing it in the first place. And that helps us kind of come back to that original question of why do we hurt the people that we love, right?
Yeah.
We can understand that there's not intentionality behind that, malintent. There's a reason why we show up in that way. And I think then we can understand how to stop it. So are you okay if we go there?
Yeah, for sure. So I love that. Why? Why do we do that? The first thing you said is it's not intentional, right? We're not doing this intentionally to hurt each other, but it's happening for some reason, right? What are the reasons that you would say we hurt each other? Why do we do this?
Yeah, well, I think to answer what happens in the present, we have to go back to the past. And we as humans, it's our human nature to survive, right? And we are wired for connection. And when we are babies, we're dependent upon other people for our survival. So our nervous systems start to learn really young, what do I need to do to survive and to connect with my caregiver? So if mom is really depressed, then as a little child, I might learn really young that I need to keep mom happy in order to keep her alive so that I can survive in this world.
Isn't that interesting? I don't think we even think through that. That, I'm a people pleaser. Why am I a people pleaser? Well, you might be a people pleaser because you had to do some pleasing techniques to keep your mom happy. And your mom being happy is actually what kept you alive and kept you safe. So it makes sense, right? When you go back to your history, it makes so much sense. So history is an important reason why we hurt each other unintentionally. What else?
Absolutely. Well, and I think we tuck that away into our subconscious, and then that comes out in our adult relationships.
Yeah, and we don't even realize it until we're often doing it and going, why? Why do I show up like this, right? I think sometimes there's also self-protection, right? We protect ourselves and we don't even realize why we're doing it or why we're defensive, but it's a way to protect ourselves. Would you say that's one of the whys as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to that survival, right? So I learned how to protect myself, and sometimes those protections have more like a more benevolent appearance, like people pleasing. But oftentimes they can be more malevolent, like the criticism or the sarcasm. In fact, let's just talk for a minute about maybe what some of those protections would be, just so our listeners can get an idea of how they might be protecting when they get into conflict with someone they love. So belittling somebody, name calling. This one, I love it. It's when you say a non-question question.
Give us an example of that.
Why do you have to be such a jerk in the morning? Like, I don't really want an answer to that question. I know you're being a jerk. Or
it's kind of a statement.
Yeah, are you going to keep talking to me like that? It's not a question I want an answer to. But it's another kind of passive aggressive form of like protecting ourselves.
And why do you think we feel the need to protect ourselves? Like, if this is our partner, our chosen person, why do we feel the need to do that?
Well, because they matter so much to us, and we get our sense of self from other people, because that's, again, if we go back to that example when a child is young, they are really getting their sense of okayness, their identity from their parent. And as we push into adult development, unless we heal those traumatic wounds, we start to develop insecure attachments, where now we try to control another person's emotions and behaviors so that we don't have to experience our own like painful emotional feelings.
Yes, and we could do a whole episode on attachment, right? How people show up, and we really should do that, because it's helpful to understand when you understand attachment and understand that there's often a person that is pursuing, and that's often an anxious attachment style, and often a person that is withdrawing, right? And that's just a way to protect ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. For that anxious, if you stay close to me, then you won't abandon me, right? Or, for somebody that's more avoidant, if I stay far enough away from you, then I won't be hurt.
Yeah. I remember when I learned that myself in my own relationship, it shed so much light on both myself and my partner. I had no idea that my husband was the way he was. I felt like it was really personal, and frankly, the same for me. But once I understood that, it made so much more sense why, when we would get into conflict or things would get hard, why he would kind of go, okay, no, thank you. And I was the anxious one, right? He was the avoidant, I was the anxious. It made so much more sense, and it didn't feel personal.
Right. It's not that he's rejecting you. It's just that the way his nervous system works, he needs to take a step back.
Yeah.
And your nervous system is like, no, I need to actually take a step forward, closer to you to feel safe.
And ironically, mine needing to step forward and his needing to step back, I think made it worse for each other, right? Because he needed space, I needed connection, but really understanding that, now I can say, oh, that makes sense. This is what he needs. This is what I need. And instead of it feeling like, oh, it's rejection, or it's just this, I need you, I need you. No, it's actually just what our nervous system needs to feel safe. So when you said that, we are built for connection, but we're built for survival and safety.
Right. But the problem is, Lindsay, you can't have both at the same time. You can't have protection and connection. So we have to choose.
Oh,
So part of that is recognizing, okay, when are we in protection? So, body language can show up in protection. Like, so if we do the eye roll or the sighing, interrupting people, talking over them can be another protection. Not talking at all, giving them the silent treatment, walking away without communicating while we're walking away. Telling somebody they should do something, or let me teach you something, or explain, that's kind of a demeaning, putting you in a one down position. or blaming you for something, right? That diffuses, it's just ways that we're diffusing the own discomfort and anxiety in our body onto somebody else.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And with that awareness, isn't that helpful? I just think, oh, I wish I would have known this when I first got married, when I first started in a relationship. Wouldn't that have been helpful? Like, there's a reason. We're not just doing this because we're behaving badly or our partner is. We're actually just trying to get in a more regulated state. And it's not always helpful the ways that we do that.
No, in fact, I'd say it's usually never
right?
never helpful.
Yeah,
unless we're aware of it, because your protection actually ends up becoming your prison, right? That thing that will prevent you from really connecting with your partner ever. So becoming aware of it is the first step.
So how do we have connection and not have protection if we feel that protection is what's going to keep us alive? What are the ways that we can say, you know what, connection matters more than protection? Like, I'm safe in this relationship. How do we find safety that we can feel like I can put my protection away and I can just feel connected?
Yeah. Well, I think that comes to our how question.
Yeah.
Like, how do we do that? And I think the first step is recognizing that when any of those protections that we listed are showing up, and I mean, obviously we didn't name all of them, just a few, right? But that when we are in protection, we are dysregulated, which means we're not safe.
Tell our listeners, when you say dysregulated, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means that something in our nervous system is sensing danger. And so we are moving out of that ventral vagal nerve where we are safe and we can be social and we can connect, and we move into protection, which is in our fight or flight or flee state. Okay.
So it's when we recognize that we are not in a regulated state. And we talked about this in a previous episode, that our body will tell us when we are not in a regulated state. So pay attention to your body, because it will give you signs, right? For me, I can tell my stomach gets in knots, my heart starts to pound, or I feel my heart racing. That's when I know something's off. Hold on. I got to get back to a regulated state because I'm not okay right now.
Yeah. Don't you love the body? It tells us, right? And so instead of being like, oh my gosh, my heart's panicking right now, it's like, thank you, heart, for panic. Like, you can tell me what I need right now, it's a cue that I'm dysregulated, that I'm not feeling safety right now. Yes. So then the obvious answer becomes, okay, how do we do it? Well, we need to get to safety.
Yes. One thing you just said that I think is so important is that we don't look at this and say, oh my gosh, I'm not okay, I got to get okay. Wait, something's going on. I need to get curious. What's going on here? And thank ourselves, thank our body. Actually, it's giving us information. It's actually working exactly as it should, right? Exactly. It makes so much sense when we look at it that way, as opposed to something's wrong with me. Let's hurry and fix it. I got to feel better. Wait, this is giving me information. I need to stop and get curious about what's going on for me.
Yeah, and just like you talked about, your need to kind of move towards, and your husband and his need to kind of move away. Yeah. That reactivity in your system is about you. Mm-hmm. It's not about your husband, and his reactivity is not about you. It's about him. Yes. And so once we can realize that our reactivity is about us, it's about what's going on inside of us, then we can depersonalize it. Like, oh, it's not my partner attacking me. It's not my partner trying to tear me down. It's not my partner trying to hurt me. It's just their nervous system needs safety. Yes. And as a partner, can I help them get to safety? Mm-hmm. And you kind of named like the most essential tool in that, which is curiosity, right? Because as soon as I know that my partner isn't feeling safe, now I can be curious with them about what they might need for safety.
I love that idea that I can be curious, not just about me, but about my partner. Right? Like, we can sit in curiosity, not go into judgment, not go into blame. But if we can stay in curiosity, boy, it opens the windows of possibilities. Yes. I can see maybe you for what's really going on inside of you, or maybe I don't know, but I can get curious about it, and I don't have to feel offended, but I can just stay in curiosity.
Yeah, because behind every protection, there is some unmet need. Yes. And so if we can get to that, if we can help them by being curious, and Lindsay, that's a lot easier from a parent to a child versus from a partner to a partner, right? So if think about it. If our 4-year-old is throwing a tantrum, right? And they may even be saying like horrible things to us. Like, I hate you, you're the worst mom ever, I don't want to live with you anymore. Things that just put a knife in our heart.
Yeah.
But, as a parent, we can realize, something's probably going on for them. And what do they need? Do they need a nap? Do they need food? Do they need a hug? Do they need space? And so we can kind of intuit that as a parent and offer that. But when we get in those romantic relationships, that gets a lot harder, right? Because now we are getting our sense of self from our partner.
So it's so close. It feels hard because it feels so personal.
It feels so personal, yeah. And I think that, with a parent-child, there's more of a power dynamic.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of easier to come into that state of like power and clarity and confidence. It's a little bit harder when our identity's on the line with our partner, and that we may not be lovable or
yes. And I also think there's a safety factor. Like, our children aren't going, like, they don't typically leave us, but a partner can choose to leave.
Absolutely. And with our home or our financial stability or the stability of our own children, if we have children in the home, so there's a lot more at risk.
Yes. A lot more at risk. And again, we're wired for safety. Like, we are wired for survival. And when our person that we're attached to, that there's some potential that there could be a severing or it could be a distancing, boy, we do whatever we can to protect.
So true.
Yeah. Good. So how do we break unhealthy? We've talked about why we do it, and we've talked about maybe some of the how. Are there any other ways that you can think of that our listeners may want to understand about how to recognize? And because I think recognizing is so key in understanding healthy or unhealthy cycles that are happening in the relationship. But are there any ways that we can help our listeners understand how to recognize or break those unhealthy cycles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first is naming what it is that we do for that protection. What is that thing that I'm doing? And, we can start by looking at like, what's the cue that our partner gives us? Is it a sharp tone in their voice that then causes that reaction in our body, right? That maybe causes us to get tense all over. So again, it's bringing us into our body, what happens in our body. And then what's the messaging that we're getting behind that? What is it telling it about me? That I'm not lovable or that I'm not enough. There's some messaging that we're going to put with whatever.
To that behavior.
Yes, to that behavior.
And it feels so personal, right? It feels so personal, even though, like you said, it's about our partner. It's not about us, but it feels so personal. And, as you were talking, I thought, how do we help people understand what repair looks like? I think we're really good at conflict. We know what it feels like to do conflict. But what does healthy repair look like? Because we know we're going to do this. We have done this. And really, if we can repair, it doesn't have to be so detrimental or so scary, right?
Right. And the chances are of us doing this perfectly in the moment, like recognizing, oh, something's happening in my body, and let me pause and check in with myself before I criticize my partner, yell at my partner. The reality of it is that, we need time and space to be able to do that, to process. And so in real time, it's usually rare that happens. And so that's why repair can become so essential. And it's just as effective as if we did it in the moment. In fact, to come back later. So I think that's really key. But also, I want to touch on being able to just repair right in the moment, doing something right in the moment. So we talked about, creating safety, like helping your partner create safety, maybe through that curiosity, like, hey, what's going on for you right now? Also, another way that we can create safety as a partner is through our body language. So we can soften our face, we can soften our eyes, we can maybe soften our body position. Because remembering that a lot of our language is nonverbal.
Yes.
So starting with that. And then, we can also create safety by trying to de-escalate our partner, meaning trying to help their nervous system to calm down. And one of the ways we can do that is by validating their feelings. You know, what's happening, what's coming up for them right now.
That is so valuable and so hard to do.
It is so hard to do. So maybe we can run through like in a quick example of what that could look like.
Yeah, I would love that.
Right. So let's say your partner says to you, I do everything around the house. You're never here. I feel like I'm your mother and not your wife. Pretty harsh, right?
I'm like, that is defensive. It's coming right up away, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so there's kind of like 3 levels that we can do in this. The first is we can just parrot right back what they said. And that's going to help them feel heard. So we can just say, what I hear you saying is that I am never here, that you do everything around the house, and that you feel like I'm more like your mother than your wife. Did I get that right? Right, so we can just parrot it right back. We don't even have to come with something new. The second level would be to actually paraphrase it. So we're kind of putting it more in our own words. So I hear you saying that you feel like I'm more like your parent than your spouse. And you feel like you've had to bear the bulk of the load around the house. Am I getting that right? So same message, but I'm kind of putting it in my own language.
Can I just interrupt you really quickly? I love that. And I think if that is in real time happening, I've got to do some work quickly.
Yeah.
To be okay, to paraphrase or parrot that back. Because again, I could feel very attacked by that statement, yes. Right? They don't know what's going on, and I could go back and just, right? But as you're saying that, I think, what would it take for a person to actually be able to do that? And I actually have on my keychain a comma. Yeah. And it's a comma to remind me to just take a breath. Just take a comma, take a break for a minute, and just take a step back. Because I love those ideas, but I think it requires us to actually calm ourselves instead of attacking right back or saying, defending ourselves or whatever. Yeah. But to be able to do that, we have to do some initial regulation. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think part of that is recognizing that what's happening, you know, between the partners it's a cycle, right? Yes. It's a dance. It's the you criticize, I defend. The more I defend, the more you criticize, and kind of externalizing that. You know, I even have couples sometimes like name the cycle. So I have a couple who they hate McDonald's. So they named the cycle between a McDonald's, and so they'd say, you know, when they start doing the criticizing or the defending, whoever would notice it would just say, oh, I don't want to go to McDonald's right now. You know, and so that would just kind of be a cue of, hey,
I like that.
Let's take a break.
Yeah, we're in our cycle.
Right. And so that's just another way to kind of de-escalate, because we're making it, the cycle is this external thing, right? Between, it's not, you're not the enemy, I'm not the enemy. It's this pattern that happens between us.
I love that when we can recognize the cycle. Yes. So I want to make sure you covered it. Was there one more thing that you said was helpful?
Yeah. And so again, these are kind of levels, because parroting is the first one. You know, paraphrasing, we can kind of put it in our own words. Yeah. But the third one would be perceiving. And that's where, you know, maybe if our partners maybe more of the withdrawer and they're cut off from their emotions, we can help them by maybe naming something for them and checking in with them. So in that example I gave, we might say something like, it sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed and that you feel abandoned and alone in the mental load of the work around the house. Like, am I getting that right? And if we could help address that imbalance, that would help you to feel more loved and seen.
So good.
Right? And then it's like,
again, I'm like, that feels like a superhuman power. And actually, can you imagine if that was said to you? It would diffuse everything. Like, oh my gosh, you see me, you hear me, you care. I mean, that would be incredible.
It would be incredible. But like you said, it's hard, and it takes practice. And I think that's where couples therapy can really be helpful, because you can have somebody kind of do the pause for you and help you be aware of, oh, we're in the cycle right now, and then as the therapist, they can help you kind of process through what are those you know, deeper feelings, underlying feelings that we're maybe not able to name in the moment.
Yes.
But that feeling is what helps our partner connect to it. And if we don't connect to the emotion, like, we're never going to feel heard or seen or feel empathy from our partner. So we've got to get to the emotion. So if we keep it in the content, we're never going to get there. We're never going to get empathy.
Got to get to the emotion.
We got to get to the emotion. And that requires curiosity. That requires that digging.
Yes.
But let's just say worst case scenario, right? We can't get there. We're not in therapy. I would say one place to start is can you just name where you are on the map?
What do you mean?
Just name what's happening for you. Like, I'm feeling really defensive right now. Or I'm feeling attacked right now. I don't know what's coming up for me. I know that there's something going on inside. I just don't know how to name it. Like, if we can just name that, like, we don't have to have all the answers, but if we can just name where we are, it's so helpful to our partner.
And you know what it does? It takes accountability. Like, I am saying, you know what? I'm accountable for what's going on inside of me. Even if, as my partner, you may not be responding the way I want you to, and you may not, whatever, but I'm going to try to show up as my highest and best self. And so I'm going to honor what's going on and just speak what's going on inside of me.
Right, because if we can put something on the map,
yes,
then that might be a cue for our partner to be like, oh, they need some curiosity right here. They don't know what's going on for them, so I can lean in and start being curious, helping them be curious.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
So Amanda, before we conclude, is there anything that you feel that I didn't ask that you want to share?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about how to help your partner kind of co-regulate, right? Using our own nervous system if we're regulated to help our partner, and that's best case scenario, because co-regulation can happen instantaneously.
Yes.
But if that doesn't, then our next best option is to self-regulate. And you kind of talked about that a little bit, right? When we talked about taking a break or naming the cycle. Hey, we're at McDonald's, like, let's take a break. And what I would say around that is, if you take a break, you want to do it in a way, again, that's being just caring about the relationship. So instead of just walking away or putting your hand in the air and saying, I can't do this right now. Just saying something like, I don't feel like I can fully show up right now. Can we revisit this in a minute when I have a few minutes to reset?
Yeah.
And there's some guidelines around that. So we want to make sure that when we're taking a break to self-regulate, we want to make sure that we're doing it between 20 minutes and 24 hours, because that's how long it takes those chemicals to move out of our body and kind of reset.
Then your partner knows you're going to come back to this. It's not going to be abandoned.
Well, and that's the other rule, right? We want to make sure that we're naming a time that we're coming back. And it's also non-negotiable, because if I'm not feeling safe in my body and I continue to engage in the conversation, I'm going to cause harm to the relationship, because I'm going to be in protection instead of connection. So I've got to pull back and recenter. And the other piece of that is that we want to be proactive. When we go self-regulate, we don't want to be stewing and like, okay, what's the next thing that I'm going to say to my partner to bring them down, or why I'm right. We really want to just be calming our bodies. So whether that's, going on a walk, doing a few push-ups, splashing cold water on our face, something that's just bringing our body back to safety, telling our body that we're safe.
Isn't that interesting? And bringing us back to the present moment, right? Yeah. Splashing water, moving. It shows, wait, we're not back in our history, in our past, but we're safe. We're okay. We're here. Yeah. Good. I love that. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. I think it is one that is so important, and that is one that, I think a lot of couples have the same fights over and over again, and go, why are we fighting about the same thing 20 years later, right? And when we can understand some of these principles, that it's often, there's a cycle that's happening. We're back at McDonald's, here we go again, right? And that we are often, our pain is our wounds often from our past, our pain from, maybe not feeling safe. And it's less about our partner and more about our wounds that are showing up, right? I love that you said we can't have protection and connection. Gosh, that's so valuable to remember. We have to choose one or the other. And sometimes choosing connection means being really vulnerable. As you said some of those things, I thought that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to even name what's going on inside for me. To say, I'm not okay right now, I just need a minute. That takes courage and that takes vulnerability, but that is what will bring us connection. Yeah. And I just, as you're saying it, I think I I want the people I see to learn this, but I want to learn this. I want to be better at saying, I got to take a minute and I want to be connected. So that requires courage.
Yeah, because that is protecting the relationship.
Yes.
So it's like we can protect self or we can protect the relationship, which is, right, protecting self.
Yes. And the relationship. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that
it's a
interesting?
win-win.
And then to begin with curiosity about self, curiosity about our partner. And when we can stay in that place, we can stay out of judgment, right? We can move and understand. And as I think about that, it feels like compassion. Curious compassion, right? It's one and the same. And when we can stay in that place, I feel like we can really move the needle instead of just get stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, it's understanding who the enemy is, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, you think about the Hunger Games, right? With Katniss Everdeen, and there's that moment at the end when she is going to, like, you know, shoot one of the other players, and he's like, remember who the real enemy is. You know, and she shoots her arrow up at the sky and it breaks the game, right?
Yes.
And so remembering who the real enemy is.
I love that. Remember who the real enemy is. It's not each other.
No, and we're in this in a team together. Like, we're fighting the enemy together. We're fighting the enemy together. It's not me against you.
Yes. Isn't that true? Sometimes I have to tell my teenagers that. Like, no, I'm on your team. I'm on your team. I know this might feel like it, but we have to remember who the enemy is. The enemy is the cycle. It's not each other, right? We've got to get clear about that. You know, I think it's an important reminder that we don't hurt each other because we don't care. We hurt each other because sometimes we lack tools and resources and understanding of how we can be a better partner, how we can show up better. So Amanda, I really appreciate this conversation. I think it will be so valuable for our listener as well as other listeners, because this is something that we all need, whether it's an intimate relationship or a more casual relationship, but understand ourselves and our partner or the other people better in our lives. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, listeners, for being here with us. And until next time, take care.